Hi everyone, welcome to the Tech Alliance podcast, or the TAP for short. My name is Marina.
And I'm Andre.
And I am Eleanor, this season's special co-host.
As a reminder, this season of our podcast is dedicated to a single topic: how to build a partnership team. This special project aims to guide companies new to partner development in understanding the benefits of partner management and the steps involved in establishing a successful partnership team.
We've already talked about what a partnership team is and how to get a budget for one. Listen to the previous episodes to learn more. And what are we going to talk about today?
Today, we're going to talk about a concept which helps streamline all partner management procedures, partner operations.
Sounds good. And we have a very special guest, right?
We do indeed. I am very happy to introduce Antonio Cardad to the Tech Alliance's podcast. He is the head of global partner operations at Tricentis and a fellow partnerships leader leading the chapter in Austin. Hello, Antonio.
Howdy, everybody. How's everybody doing?
We're good. Good to have you on.
I'm very well, thank you. Very excited for this.
Fantastic. I don't know about special, so thank you for the very kind introduction, Eleanor. And I'm very, very excited to be here with the three of you.
Antonio, we're thrilled to have you as our guest today and hope you help our listeners get a better understanding of partner operations. So, what is partner operations?
That's a great question. And the thing about partner operations is that it's such a nascent role that you'll probably see that it's defined different in a different manner from organization to organization for those organizations that actually have partner ops. There's still a lot. I would say that most organizations with a partnerships team or a partnership strategy don't have partner ops, right? The way I personally define partner ops, and this might differ. You might find people that have a different definition of partner operations, but it's the role, it's the team that will help you build, maintain, and create efficiencies in all of that foundation of your partnerships team and your partnership strategy, right? And it will help you provide that rigorous execution of all that relationship execution within your partnerships team. Does that make sense, or was that a very kind of convoluted definition?
No, that was great, but what's rigorous execution?
That's a great question, Andre. So, as you know, as a partnerships team grows, as a partnerships team starts adding more and more partners to their portfolio, to their umbrella, and starts working with more partners, you need to create efficiencies, you need to create scalability, right? You cannot just maintain partnerships working as a one-off, as ad hoc partnerships, because it's just not scalable. It's hard to do different things with different partners and just keep the same rhythm, right? And so what partner ops and what rigorous execution help with is creating that scalability for you to keep adding partners to your portfolio, but also for you to be able to keep working efficiently and creating true partnerships with every partner that you sign, right? So that means creating processes, creating documentation, making sure that behind the scenes, your partner ops team is doing everything possible that for those partnerships to work. So run your partner program in many cases. In many cases, not in my case, but in many cases also, partner ops runs enablement. So the whole activation and life cycle of the partners. And then also, it's the team that is going to gather, maintain, and run all that data for you behind the scenes so that you can actually prove what you're doing and your impact in the organization.
Can we compare partner operations to a pipeline that helps streamline all the processes?
Great question. So yes, in many cases, partner operations manages pipeline gen, right? Manages pipeline gen, manages revenue, manages all of that, right? In my case, for example, in my role, me and my team, we handle forecasting, we handle pipeline gen, we handle bookings, which is revenue. So we handle the whole shebang of like partners generating top of funnel to bottom funnel, right? So there's that. And so it depends. I'm starting to get a little bit deeper into some things, but you can equate it to sales ops, right? Again, partner ops, depending on the team that you talk to, you might find partner ops to be part of partnerships. If there's a dedicated and siloed partnerships, that, in my opinion, should not be the case. But in my case, for example, I am part of RevOps. And so as RevOps, I do and me and my team do many of the similar things that sales ops does for direct sales, right? So we're those counterparts that make up the RevOps team, and we all report to a CFO, for example. We don't report into sales, we don't report into a CRO. We're part of the CFO and the finance kind of like tree.
Brilliant. So we talked about in our last episode about getting budget for partnerships teams and the different functions within it. Talk to me a little bit about the significant impact that a dedicated partner operations person can have, and how someone would justify having a role like that versus having these responsibilities maybe spread throughout partnerships teams, which I know I have done before, and I'm sure many of us have listening. We've all been in a partnerships role where we've had ops as kind of, tapped on top. What is the benefit of having this, actual person that is dedicated to doing this, and how can people justify that?
That's a great question. I normally start with the fact of like, hey, if sales have sales ops, why should you, as partnership leaders, a VP of partnerships, not have partner ops, right? Why don't you have any help? Why does it fall on you to basically do everything? One of the biggest issues that I see plaguing partnerships people, because I've been one, right? Before I was a head of partner ops, run partnerships for a very long time at multiple organizations, right? And it's a fact that as partnerships people, we wear 16, 20, 25 hats, depending on who you ask, right? Shout out to Greg Portnoy. He had a fantastic post on LinkedIn, I want to say earlier this year, where he said like a partnerships person has something like 18 jobs, right? And so when you have 18 jobs, you literally there's not enough time in the day and in the week to do all those things, right? And one of the biggest issues that I was mentioning that I see with partnerships people is that a lot of times we're seen as all talk, but no data to back that up, right? There's this is not my phrase, it's a phrase coined by somebody else, I don't really know who, but that says, without data, you're just another person with an opinion. And that matters, right? And why does that matter? Because whenever you go into those conversations with your CEO, with your CFO, with your CRO, you have to you have not only tailor your talk track and your conversation and how you're going to sell things and pitch things, but more likely than not, they're going to want data to back up your talk, right? Prove me that you're actually making an impact where you're saying you're making an impact in revenue, in top of funnel, in cost, CAC, in retention, in churn. How do I know that you're actually doing what you're saying if you don't have the data to back that up, right? So that's one thing. So going back to that element of partnerships, people have 18, 20, 25 different things to do. We cannot expect you to be able to do all this, right? And so that's where partner ops becomes critical to a team that is growing and to a team that needs to be able to do this, right? You as a partnership person have to focus on building those relationships and building that trust with your partners. And that takes time. That takes a lot of effort. That takes a lot of different kind of meetings and planning and sessions around joint business plan, marketing campaigns, account planning, et cetera, et cetera. And now compound that by you probably maybe as a partner manager, maybe if you're lucky, you have 20-ish accounts. If you're normally in one of the bigger orgs, you might have 50, 75, maybe 100 accounts. You cannot do that, right? And so that's where partner ops comes in. Partner ops is going to help you set all that architecture in your CRM and in your different systems for everything to run smoothly and keep finding efficiencies. They're going to help you with contracting and governance. We're going to help you with onboarding and life cycle of partners. We're going to help you actually execute on strategy that the partner leader and the C-suite might have with partnerships. We're going to help with budget and planning. We're going to help with forecasting. We're going to help with tracking and reporting, etc., etc., etc. Right? Because that way, you as a partnerships people, as a partnerships person, and your partnership team, your PMs, can then focus on what they do best, which is on building those relationships, on building that trust, and on growing those partnerships, and not be in the weeds of everything else operatively.
Why do so few teams have partner ops investment? And what are the missed opportunities of neglecting this function?
It's $1 million answer. It's $1 million question that everybody wants to ask, right? I mean, let's start with the fact that probably, and this is not a real number that I'm going to throw. This is just a guesstimation in Antonio Cardad's brain. But probably 60% of partnership teams out there are underfunded, if not more. And so you have to start there, right? A lot of times, those teams don't get the proper investing or the funding until what? Until they generate revenue, until they prove their worth, until they are consistently showing that they are doing what they need to be doing, right? And if you don't have that funding, you can only and that's your North Star. I need to generate revenue in order to be able to do this. You can only focus on what you're being asked to do, right? Which is generating revenue. Partner ops and partner operations is not going to be that person that is going to be. We can definitely assist, and I'm part of a lot of calls with partners in all of this, right? But we are not PMs. We're not the hunters looking for opportunities. We're not the relationship builders. Can we? Sure. But this is not what you hire a partner ops person for, right? And so when your focus is on that, because your job is on the line, your partner manager's job is on the line, that's what you're going to focus on. And so you forget about these kind of things, which is gathering the data and measuring everything, which is creating documentation, creating processes, creating efficiencies. In the back end, a very, very, very hairy animal starts growing, right? It's not ideal. It's horrible. To your partners, you cannot try to act like, oh, everything is peachy and everything works perfectly. But in the back end, you know that you're just running around trying to keep things working with duct tape and glue, right? That's not the best way to grow a partnerships team. That's not the best way to grow any team, right? And so that's where it comes. That's what it comes down to. It's the fact that a lot of teams are being asked to do exactly one thing, and they don't get the investment until they do exactly that thing. And then their targets, let's say they do that thing, and what happens? Their targets grow. And so they have to generate more. Or their quota grows and things like that, right? And so it's what happens there, right? A few years ago, rev ops and sales ops in the industry was not a thing. And sales teams were in this same boat. They were trying to keep everything working and everything maintained while they were still selling and closing and selling and closing and bringing customers, right? Until somebody said, and I don't know who that somebody is, somebody said like, hey, why don't we hire a person that helps you run all of this and let you focus on getting customers and closing customers, right? And now RevOps is the fastest growing field in corporate America.
No, I was going to say, like, we have seen an increasing number of partner operations roles starting to come up, which is really fantastic to see. And we spoke in our first episode about the kind of skill set and experience that we should look for in a partner manager. What are some of the skill sets and experience that, you know, you would look for in a partner operations person? Like, what do you look for your team? Maybe a little bit about your background.
Great question. So as a partnerships person, I've always done partner ops, and it's been a passion of mine. I'm an engineer. And so my brain thinks numbers, my brain thinks process, my brain thinks those kind of things, right? I'm actually a nerd in process flowing. I love creating a good process flow. Why? I don't know. It's just my brain, right? But that's a great question because I get that since I pivoted into partner ops, and this is where I wanted my career to go. But also, I just hired a couple of people, right? What I was looking in these two people that I just hired was a combination, a couple of things. I wanted them to understand partners, right? So I wanted them to had worked in some partner related job previously, because the nuances of working with partners is completely different than just working with customers, right? And then within itself, like there was a big, hey, if you work with GSIs, even better, right? Because again, and for us, we work with a lot of the GSIs, which is I know a lot of companies want. We're lucky to already have the GSIs, but the nuances of working with a GSI is very different than working with a regional SI, working with an MSP of our distributor, tech partner, et cetera, right? So I wanted them to have that experience just because I need them to understand how the partnerships world works, right? And operates. And then one of the second things that I was looking for is I wanted them to have a little bit of experience in sales ops because I need them to be analytical. The most important thing that I wanted these two roles to be is I didn't want two people to just push a button, right? To be button pushers and to be fully technical. I wanted these two people to be highly strategic. Why? Because I don't want to hire a person that just is going to run reports whenever the partner team asks. Like, hey, I need a report on revenue created by GSIs in this specific region, blah, blah, blah. No, these two people are going to help me be my right and left hand men and women in other geos because my team covers global, right? And so they are going to be basically the conciliers, right? Like the advisors of our VP and SVPs of partnerships and sales in the region. And I need them to understand how to A, gather data, B, measure things, and C, analyze the data so that they can come to our regional leaders and provide insights, right? And provide insights on time. So if from week to week we see a drop in pipeline gen, from month to month we see a drop in revenue or an increase in revenue, if a partner is doing great but another is not, for them to find those kind of trends, for them to find that data and go to them and say like, hey, this is working, this is not, this is what we suggest you should tweak or what you should be doing or what you should stop doing, right? A technical person is not going to give you that. And so the two people that I hired, and I told them like, if the team starts burying you in like tactical work, make sure you tell me because that's not your point. You need to be, yes, we're going to do what partner operations does, right? But at the same time, we need to be highly strategic because we're going to be the advisors for a C-suite, for executives, for leaders in everything partner in our regions, right? And so that's a little bit of how I looked at these two people that we were hiring. The way I designed with my management the interview process is that each of the people that interviewed would hit different things, and there would be overlaps to make sure that the answers matched and all of that. And so we were looking at different things from different angles to get this right. And so that's a little bit of what I was looking for. Does that answer your question?
It looks like you have two heroes at hand. The combination of skills and traits is so rare. I guess it's very difficult to find a perfect candidate for a position in partner operations.
It's definitely hard because you have a lot of people that have sales ops background, but they don't have partner background. Or you have a lot of people that have a lot of partner background, but they've never actually been in the weeds of running the operations and analytics and everything behind the scenes because of what we talked earlier. They had 27 different jobs and that was not part of their main responsibility, right? So right now it's definitely hard because as Eleanor mentioned, you're starting to see this role pop up a lot more, which makes me very, very happy. I had a post earlier this year that I said this is a year of partner ops. I might have been maybe a year ahead. We'll see. But still the pool of talent, and I don't want to say talent, just the pool of candidates with the skill is quite limited, which makes a lot of those people that are actually doing it very valuable and unicorn.
Well, that's super interesting and super encouraging to hear. It also resonates a little bit with what we've touched on previously on the podcast when we talked about partner managers themselves being jacks of all trades and masters of some. Right? It definitely seems to be running theme across this area in general, that you need to be well vested in with multiple skills, and maybe a wealth of backgrounds, a richness of background is actually a huge advantage. So, to our listeners who are thinking about this, both in terms of creating a team, once again, don't despair because Antonio just told you that you will never be able to find the same two unicorns that he just poached. Rather, think more creatively about where you should be searching for these people, because you can find them in surprising places. But let's switch gears a little bit and talk about the technological. Let me do this again. Let's switch gears a little bit and talk about the technological aspect of the thing rather than just the people. What are the must-haves and the optionals? Right? What's in your view the essential technologies for partner operations and tools and so on?
That's a great question. Before I dive into that, you just mentioned the phrase "jack of all trades, master of none." A lot of people don't know the full phrase, and every time somebody quotes that, I tell them use a full phrase, and that is "jack of all trades, master of none," but oftentimes better than a master of one. And so whenever somebody says "jack of all trades" is a bad thing because you don't know anything, you know a little bit of everything, I always say like, well, it's better than a master of one, right? And so, anyways,
I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more, and I hope our listeners will have caught on to the fact that I actually said master of some.
Oh, there you go. There you go. Fair enough. I stand corrected. Anyways, so diving into the question that you just asked about tech. So that's a great question, and the answer might vary. I mean, in my opinion, your CRM is a must-have. Like your CRM is your base of everything, right? Regardless of what CRM you use, that's where it all starts, and that should be your source of truth. Please, listeners, do not have more than one source of truth. If you have more than one source of truth, you're just opening yourself to a whole nightmare. Don't. So like one source of truth. So your CRM is a must-have. Any partnership person will then bring up PRM. I don't know. I am of the mindset that, don't get me wrong, PRMs are super useful, and I have one, and I've had one in the past from organizational that. But it's a matter of context. It's a matter of where you are in your partnership journey to know if you need a PRM or not. And if you actually architect your CRM properly, you might be able to live without a PRM for a little bit. I'm not saying that the CRM is meant to use the PRM. Nope. At Salesforce is definitely not. There's no partner object, right? You end up having to transform a customer object into a partner or do a custom object, right? But don't jump into the PRM boat too early, right? Also, don't jump into a PRM boat too late, because if you jump into it too late, you might already have a very, very, very hairy animal in your CRM that is hard to untangle, right? So it really depends on context. I mean, communication tools such as Slack are critical. If you're able, and not a lot of organizations are going to want to integrate into your Slack and communicate that way, and that's understandable. A lot of these things are going to be hit or miss in the sense of like, some partners will want to use some tools, some partners will not want to use some tools. A lot of that depends on their compliance teams. A lot of that depends on their IT teams. And, that's how the ball rolls, right? You need a ticketing system always, be it Jira, ServiceNow, Salesforce, for whatever kind of like ticketing item you need. Going a little bit back to a PRM, what the PRM really does help you is having a standardized place for partners to come in and work with you, right? So that place where, a portal where they're gonna come in and do deal reg and find documentation and get access to, courses and things like that. That's super valuable for a PRM, along with, actually managing partners, right? But again, don't jump in either too early or too late. It depends. In terms of collaboration, it gets tricky, right? Because there are tools out there that can help you, like a PRM can help you with collaboration. But then sometimes if you want collaboration one-to-one, where you are working with a specific partner and you need just a dedicated thing because There's dedicated resources that you're building with them, joint plan, etc., that are not for everybody else. Then some PRMs fall flat on that. You're gonna need to find a second tool, right? You need a contract management tool. You absolutely need a contract management tool. You don't want to be sending PDFs and receiving PDFs with a watermark and things like that. So a contract management tool, I don't know, Ironclad, Evisort, DocuSign, those kind of things. Make sure that it's integrated into your CRM so that you know when a partner is signed and if an account is actually signed, so that you're not having to chase opportunities with a account that you've never seen, and then you find out like, hey, this partner is not signed, and then you're having to go to multiple systems, right? So integration amongst all tools is becoming kind of like a theme that I'm touching, right? And then another couple of pieces that I think are critical, or maybe at least one, and that is you want a reporting system, right? You want Salesforce or your CRM can become that, but they're limited. And so if you can invest in something like a Power BI, I would say absolutely freaking do it, because one of the most important things and one of the best things that you can do as partner ops is build out automated dashboards for everybody to know their business in real, right? Including your CEO, instead of them asking like, hey, Antonio, can you run this report for me and blah, blah. You can just point to a dashboard and they have everything, right? Your CRMs normally get you to a certain place, but don't get you past that. So you need a little bit of that. Now, we all know that tools like Power BI require expertise behind the scenes. So if you're going to require your partner ops team to run tools like that, then, talking on what we were talking about earlier, the person that you're hiring needs to have that expertise in those kind of tools, right? And then some of the optionals that I would add are, project management tools, Asana, things like that, just for organization, right? If you're going to be running and doing certifications, if you're going to be doing courses, you absolutely want an LMS system to build all of these things. Can you live with videos on YouTube or on Loom and things like that? Sure. But can you actually give real certifications based on videos like that? It gets a little bit iffy, right? And then there's optionals like, I think more and more it's becoming evident that tools like Crossbeam are critical to partner teams, but a lot of teams are still struggling to get the buying on those tools. For example, I love the Crossbeam team. I'm very close to a Crossbeam team, but I don't have Crossbeam. I'm trying to get Crossbeam, right? Revenue intelligence tools like Clary for forecasting are super, super helpful, but they're not musts. You can live without them. Although if you live without them, you're going to live in probably Excel land when you are forecasting and things like that. So collaboration tools that are what the PRMs don't give you and tools like SharePoint don't give you. So tools like Collabi, great options to look at. And then if you're doing tech partnerships and things like that, always having an integration tool, an integration partner helps. Workspan, for example, right? So I just touched on a few there.
Absolutely. I mean, you touched on so many, which is amazing because, companies need a lot of technologies in order to accelerate with their partnerships. I know that a lot of those functionalities that you talked about, around analytics and insights and collaboration and sharing, maybe training or certification paths and badging and things like that. Some of those can be done within PRMs. Not always, not with every PRM. Sometimes they can. And you mentioned that there is, you don't want to jump into PRM land too early and you don't want to jump in too late. I have my own answer to this question because I must it really frequently, but I'm really interested to hear what your answer is. Do you think there's a sweet spot for when people should get a PRM?
I don't know that there's a sweet spot. I've been put in this hot seat before. Thank you, Eleanor. I appreciate that. It's a tough question. It's frankly a tough question. I normally say that the moment you get to a point where you feel like the tools that you have are getting in the way of managing a partner, when you're starting to build things in your CRM that you shouldn't be building, like custom objects and custom fields and things like that, just to track partnerships and that are not helpful to anybody else in the organization other than just you and your team. When you start getting into those kind of conversations where the partner is like, hey, I need this, and you cannot get out of email land of saying, like, sending your program guide via email or your addendums via email and things like that, that is never ideal. I think that's when you should start considering a PRM. And you're absolutely right. A lot of PRMs do come with LMS in there. In my experience, I haven't used all PRMs. I know some. In my experience, a lot of times those are LMS systems, and I could be wrong. If there's a PRM person hearing me out, feel free to call me out. Take you to a certain extent. It's just like the collaboration area of a PRM. Like, they take you to a certain point, but then you might need more specialized things, right? And that's where you need to maybe look outside. So I feel like I gave you a cop-out answer because I didn't answer your question. I think it's really relative. I think the sweet spot is if you're getting past maybe 50 partners and you're starting to do all of those things, that's when you're like, I think it's time for a PRM. Like, some people might say, like, hey, it's less than that. It's 30 partners. It's 25, it's 20 partners, right? But some others might, if you're only running, and it also depends on what kind of program you're running, right? If you're only running a referral program or an affiliate program, you're not running anything much more complex than that. You might not really need it, right? Because partners are just referring things to you. And so, like, you might be able to hold off a little bit longer. So it really depends on the context of what you're doing. And the most important thing as partner ops that I always tell people is tech debt. Never forget tech debt. Why? Because the more tools you add, the more integrations you have to do, and the harder it is for you to manage. Whenever you add a tool into your tech stack that you're going to ask your internal team to use, you might think that you're automating things. You might think that you're creating efficiencies, but it's another tool for them to learn. It's another tool for them to use. And if those tools are not integrated, it's another place where they have to go and find things and do things. That's not ideal, because you think you automated things in the back end, but you actually made things harder for your partner managers, for your team, right? And so tech debt, it's a reality. And also, if you ever want to, let's say you buy a tool, you're using the tool, everything is good, but then you evolve. You as an organization evolve, and that tool now doesn't fit your needs. It's harder to get rid of it if you're integrated into a bunch of other tools, right? And so you have to take that into consideration.
Well, Antonio, you mentioned so many tools. I have only one question. How many displays do you have on your desk?
How many displays? Oh, I'm an old school guy. Like, literally, I use my laptop screen. At work, we have, the two screens, and I'm an old school guy. I still, like, call me outdated, call me old, call me whatever, but I use my one laptop screen. Every once in a while, I dabble into the two screens, but I just find myself getting a little bit lost. I need to get better at that. That's for sure. But I mean, that's a problem as well, right? So, yeah.
I don't think Antonio really needs any of those tools. I think he has most of that information up in his head. That's how he works.
That is a good question, and that is a tricky one. That's the word that I was trying to find. That is a tricky one. Why? Because most of your partner operations plan and partner operations requests are gonna be on the side of creating efficiencies, creating costs, reducing costs, creating taking manual work and operational work off of the plate of your partner managers, right? And so normally when you are talking about looking for buy-in and looking for investment in a role that a lot of people see as sales, but it's not actually sales generating, that's where it gets tricky, right? So normally where I go, and I haven't until this role, I know that I'm partner ops now, I had not had the pleasure of actually had a partner ops person, right? I was that person that ran my own op. And so Where I would go is how sales ops is measured initially in your organization, how rev ops is measured. What is the value that your CFO, your CRO, your CEO, your COO see in rev ops and sales ops? And I would grab myself a little bit from that, right? What are all the efficiencies that they create? What is the investment that you have in them? What is their cost? And start there, right? And then start by really measuring or trying to measure your team in terms of all of the time that is spent on these manual things and the time that and the things that are not being done because there's not enough time in the day, right? So if you were to say, hey, if I were to have a partner ops person that takes all of these responsibilities off of my partner manager might be able to go from handling 20 partners to maybe 30, to maybe 35. And if we're starting to take the average revenue generated by, I'm not going to say your best partner, just take an average partner. This is how much we could start generating, right? Because now they are focused on those things and on having more accounts, right? And that's where you start saying, at least these are the savings, right? And then you can start also going to the sense of like, hey, this person is going to have all those metrics that you keep asking from me, and that maybe it takes me 5 days, a week to actually get in front of you. This person is going to have them for you within 24 hours, or maybe fully automated in a dashboard in Power BI, right? This person is all of these problems that we have in the backend where partners are complaining about how slow our contracting is, how painful it is to use our partner portal because it's horrible, how hard it is for our team to provision our product if you have a product that is provisioned, right? That's where partner ops comes in, because I'm not having to spend my effort and time on those things. That person is going to handle that for me, and I can still keep doing what I do, which is trying to generate revenue, right? And so that person might help us with marketing campaigns if we don't have a partner marketing team, right? Or a marketing ops person. And so that's how I would build my plan. I would also start looking at companies outside, right? A, B, C, D, E have partner ops. Why do they have partner ops? Look at their ecosystem. Their ecosystem is generating it's generating X, Y revenue. They have X number of partners, et cetera, and they have a partner ops person, right? Again, you might not need a partner ops person if you have 10 partners. You might not, right? But I'm of the strong belief that if you are starting to build a partnerships team, I think the partner ops person should be your second hire. So you're the VP of partnerships. Your first hire is obviously revenue generating. So it's a partner manager that is going to help you split the work with all the partners that you have. That second person should be your partner ops person. Why? Because you need to set the foundation correctly from the very beginning. If you bring a partner ops person later in the game, that person might have to untangle a horrible hairy animal in the CRM, might have to deal with a tech stack that is not talking to each other, that is not fully integrated, might have to deal with no documentation for a partner team that is handling maybe 150 resellers. And creating documentation at that point is very hard. And changing the way a team works is very hard, right? And so there's a lot of elements that go into it, but hopefully I've given you a semblance of an answer there.
Yeah, no small task. Well, dear tappers, if you manage to stay with us this long, this will probably be one of the longer episodes of the season, but it's well worth it. If you haven't listened to us, you will have missed Antonio hating on PRMs. Antonio missing his projection of 2024 being the year of partner ops. No, just kidding. So first of all, we got amazing insights about when specifically a PRM comes in super handy for your organization and how to think about it. There's no magic answer. There's no silver bullet. There's just a very strategic way to approach this. And I absolutely loved Antonio's take on this. I think you will too. We will do something with the backend automation can backfire. We will definitely use that for something. And yes, year of partner ops is still coming. Maybe it doesn't have to be just 1 year. Maybe it becomes 2020s become that time when everybody becomes really conscious of them. I'd say other things that stood out to me were that the partner ops unicorns are in short supply. So one of the logical conclusions for me is that maybe it's time to become one. So if you're listening to us thinking about the next move in your career, go back and re-listen to what Antonio had to say about the kind of skills and experience you need to evolve, and you will be in high demand. Finally, I'd say, I think as a final summary, the raison d'etre of partner ops. They do drive revenue, despite what you might initially think. They also, although you didn't mention it by name, Antonio, I think, but I think it stood out as a very clear through line for me, is that they reduce PM burnout. If you feel like your partner management team is on its last legs, create a partner ops operation and see how they reflourish. And finally, and probably the most important of all, feels to me like partner ops increase partner happiness. And that's what this game is all about. So with that, Antonio, you've been amazing. It's been super awesome having you on the show. And thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate you guys having me. You hit on something there that I forgot the whole episode, and I don't know how I forgot, which is partner experience.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for being our guest, Antonio. It was a real pleasure. Your expertise has just been super valuable to this conversation. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. I think we need a whole other episode for partner experience. But anyways, it was a pleasure being with the three of you. I feel like I talked a lot, but hopefully it's useful for folks out there.
And we'll hold you to that. We haven't had repeat guests on our show, but neither have we had special co-hosts. And, there's always this first for everything. So here we go. So, that's what better segue to thank our listeners for being with us all this way and for subscribing. We hope you found this episode informative and engaging. If you haven't subscribed yet, I'm not exactly sure how you managed to find us, but in that case, please subscribe to our podcast. You can find us on Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Pocket Cast. The links are in the description.
Catch you next time on The Tap.